Ready to get going? Ready for me to kick this off?
I'm all set, Taryn.
All right, excellent. So welcome. Hello. Thank you so much for joining us today for our second Expert Talk webinar series. I'm Taryn Tenney, and I'm one of the Associate Directors of Enrollment here at McLean. And I'm pleased to have our K-12 Master Reading Coordinator, Natalie Stapert, here today to discuss how McLean Students supports students with dyslexia. A hallmark of McLean's transformative approach to education is that we meet the needs of all learners, focusing first on their strengths and then supporting any challenges they might have. Today, Natalie will be digging into just how that's done with bright students who have challenges with reading here at McLean. I hope that you find today's webinar informative. I'd like to please ask that you save questions for the end, but as I mentioned before, please feel free to chat them to me and I would be happy to moderate those for you. Again, I'm Taryn Tenney. I'm the host of the meeting, so you can just chat them directly to me. And please do note too that today we are going to be recording today's webinar, but only our speaker will be recorded. And with that, Natalie, please take it away.
Hello, everyone. I'm so glad to welcome you to this webinar today. My name is Natalie Stapert, and I am the K-12 Master Reading Coordinator at McLean School. Today, we're going to be talking about dyslexia and students with reading disabilities. And McLean is a leader in reading instruction because we take a systematic, explicit, and sequential approach to teaching children to read. Let's start with talking about what reading is. Reading is a particularly difficult thing to learn because it involves a variety of different skills, and they are broadly broken into two areas. One part of reading is separate from print, and it's called language comprehension. And language comprehension involves a person's ability to understand vocabulary, understand sentences that are spoken to them, know how books and stories go and how informational text goes, and have background knowledge or information about the world that they can bring to bear on a text that they're reading or on a new topic that they're studying orally. The second part of reading is word recognition, and this part is very attached to print. So at first, students need to understand that spoken words are made up of individual sounds, and they need to be able to break apart spoken words into their individual sounds. They also need to be able to blend sounds together to make words. In order to read, in addition to knowing that these sounds exist, they need to know the letters that represent those sounds in print, and then be able to say the sound that each letter or letter combination represents. So for example, if a child is trying to read the word cat, they need to understand that cat has three sounds, k, a, and t, and then they need to know the letter symbol for each of those sounds. It sounds straightforward, and in some ways it is, but English has many, many more sounds than it has letters, and some letters represent multiple sounds. So learning the situations in which each individual letter indicates a different sound can take a while for students. The last part of word recognition is called sight recognition. And the best way to explain this to you is that once you have seen a word a certain number of times, you no longer have to look at each letter in that word and say each sound. You do recognize the whole word. That's the last step in recognizing words. And for example, even our youngest students in kindergarten typically can recognize the word McLean, even though they may not know yet how the E and the A function in the word McLean to make that A sound. Most of us who are adults can read the word democracy without needing to sound out each letter in that word, because we have encountered it before and we recognize it. It's now within our sight recognition. This is really important information to help me explain to you how dyslexia functions in the brain. So here I have a graphic that compares a typically developing brain with a brain that is structured with dyslexia. So in a person who is typically developing, the three different regions of the brain are working when that person is reading. there is some activity going on in the front of the brain known as Broca's area. And that part of the brain deals with the sounds that we say, and it deals with breaking apart words into their sounds. But in a typically developing brain, most of the action is going on towards the back of the brain. And those are the areas where sight recognition particularly lives. And so what happens is that in a person who is typically developing, they will use phonics to help them decode unfamiliar words, but very quickly those words move from the front of the brain where they're saying each sound to the back of the brain where they recognize the whole word. With a person with dyslexia, the back of the brain is much less active. Dyslexia does exist on a spectrum, which means a person can be experiencing very mild dyslexia. So there is some activity going on towards the back of the brain when they read, but maybe not as much as a typically developing person. Or a person can have fairly severe dyslexia, where very, very few words are recognized by sight. And the student, each time they see the word cat or each time they see the word democracy, they have to sound out each letter because the word doesn't exist for them as a whole in the back of the brain. So at McLean, we work with students with dyslexia and other reading disabilities within the broader context of our educational philosophy. At McLean, we really focus on students' abilities and strengths. This is an important part of our success with our students. So for students who struggle with reading, we have skills and strategies to help them get steadily better. And many of our students do reach benchmark before they leave the 8th grade. However, unlike other schools, we don't focus on their reading for additional time, and we don't belabor it throughout the day. We make sure that the instruction that we're giving is the most efficient and the most effective so that they have other parts of their day where they're working on things that they're really strong at, that they're engaged in, and that they find enjoyable, perhaps math or science, music or sports, drama, and that allows them to come to each reading lesson refreshed, confident, because they feel like a person who is capable and successful and ready to make the best use of that reading time. We also have instructional methods called the McLean Method that are really helpful in promoting reading abilities in students who struggle in this area. So for example, one of the things that's most important about McLean is that we do work with students in very small groups. So students who are struggling with reading will have groups of 3, 4, or 5 students, and they will be working with a teacher who is specially trained in reading instruction and typically does only reading instruction all day. Works with kindergarten, then 1st, then 2nd, works with 5th, then 6th, then 7th, and 8th, and they move throughout the day working with the students who need the most support in ways, again, that allow the child to use that time really effectively and make gains quickly. Part of that is our commitment across our school to the Orton-Gillingham approach to instruction. That means that we are assessing which letters and sounds students know and which ones they need to know next. And we are teaching those skills in ways that involve a lot of sensory opportunities to see and hear and have different movements related to the words and sounds to help kids remember them better. We tailor our reading plans to each individual group. And so this, knowing our students really well and being a teacher in a group with just 3 or 4 students allows you to, we're not pulling something off the shelf that says the next lesson for today is, we're really being thoughtful about what students need. And when we see them moving quickly, we can move more quickly with them. When we see them needing repetition and reminders and review, we do that also. So as the master reading coordinator, I teach a couple of different groups. So last year I was teaching one 1st grade group, 3 little 1st graders who were learning really consonants and vowel sounds. And a cat was one of our words, dog was one of our words, mom, dad. And they were so excited when as 6-year-olds, they were learning these words and able to recognize them. And parents would comment on it too. They would say like, oh, I was in a store and there was a sign and it said, please. And I could see my child doing the pull, and then they knew the z at the end, but not the middle. And so we would talk about how the parent could support the child in that moment. And it was very exciting. I also taught an 8th grade group last year of students who needed a lot of accommodations, and helping them to really feel confident with text. With the 8th graders, it was a lot about reading out loud to a partner so that they were disciplined not to skip over words they didn't know, but because that partner was expecting them to read every word, that they had to consistently look at all of the words and all of the sounds on the page. So that was exciting. Now I teach a 10th grade group, and it's really, really interesting to see kids reading fluently and then thinking a lot about the author's message, the focus on society and what we want our world to be like versus the way that our world is. It's very fun to work with these students in different groups and different ages, and to help them on their journey to becoming readers. So in addition to being an Orton-Gillingham school where all of our teachers are Orton-Gillingham trained, we are also a school that promotes structured literacy. If you do want to know more about structured versus balanced literacy, our lower school reading specialist, Abby Himmelrich, has written an excellent blog on it. And it does come up as one of Google, if you were to type it into Google, it will come up as one of the top responses for this question. So one way to think about it is that structured literacy is an approach to reading that's really bottom up. It starts with individual letters, individual sounds, and it builds from sounds to words, to sentences, to paragraphs, to novels and text. Balanced literacy works in the opposite direction. The teacher doesn't teach a lot of things about words and sounds, letters and sounds or words. There's an emphasis on understanding how language works, using the first letter to guess what the word is, using what's going on in the picture to guess what the word is. And while this is a very common approach to literacy, it has been shown not to be effective. Like a large number of children will not be able to learn to read if they are guessing the word based on the first letter or what's happening in the picture. And so we often do see that when students come to McLean, the phonics instruction that they're getting on letters and sounds and words really helps unlock the code for them, and they're able to make progress quickly. And we're very focused on ensuring progress. We know that kids and parents come to us with the goal of being able to fluently and independently read text. And so we want to be sure that as a school, we are doing everything that we can to support them in that goal. So we assess all of our students 3 times a year, fall, winter, and spring. And each student is assessed individually, which means that they do sit with a reading specialist, a reading teacher, or me, and we listen to them read. We calculate how quickly they're reading, we assess their comprehension, and then we are able to make instructional decisions based on that information. So students who are making quick progress, maybe they came into McLean not reading very well, but the phonics instruction is working and they are quickly making progress, we can move them to groups that are also moving at a faster pace. Students who may have come in without any reading diagnosis, but who are struggling are quickly identified and moved to groups that are the most supportive, that have the smallest number of students and the most trained teachers. For students where there are particular concerns, we do monitor them between assessments as well to make sure that the things that we're trying are working, because we don't want to waste any time. We want to be really efficient in helping kids become independent readers. So one thing that our assessments are not is that the assessments that we're giving at McLean are not diagnostic. So when I do talk with parents about reading scores, sometimes a parent will ask me, well, does this mean my child has dyslexia or another reading disability if they're reading below grade level? And the answer is, I don't know, because a screening assessment, it tells us how the child is performing now compared to other grade level, to the expectations for that grade level. It also tells us the likelihood that the child will continue to perform well or will continue to need support in the future, but it doesn't tell us why. So in order for parents to understand why a child might be scoring poorly, they would need a neuropsychological assessment. So that's a different type of assessment that we don't give at McLean. So based on our assessments, we then group students according to their assessment scores and to the observations of teachers, because we do know that anxiety sometimes plays a role in a child's assessment scores. So we would never use their assessment scores alone to group them, but we do use that in connection with parent information and in connection with teacher observations. So here you have a student who is doing one of our more fun activities, which is writing in shaving cream. And this is something that sometimes helps to grab kids' attention and help them really look at the letters and sound. That's the most important thing. It's the shaving cream is not the most important thing, or the bumpy letters or anything. It's that the child is connecting the letters that they see to the sounds that they hear in the word. And that's what really brings reading to life for young kids. In 5th through 8th grade, we do have a switch in our program. So in K-4, most of our focus is on phonics, on decoding, and on fluent reading. The students do practice some comprehension skills like identifying the main idea and details, or describing characters' traits, or describing the setting. But in 5th through 8th grade, we start to transition students from that highly supportive lower school experience to the high school experience, which is going to be much more independent. So we have 5th and 6th graders who are still very much focused on phonics and spelling, and spend a lot of time working with letters and sounds. They're working at the word level. They're reading sentences and paragraphs, mostly in their work. We also have 5th and 6th graders in different groups who are working on novel studies. They're doing thematic studies, and they're really using reading more to learn and to interpret the world around them. So there's a wide range in the 5th and 6th grade, which means that students who come to us in 5th and 6th grade are often reading different books and getting different instruction within their reading groups, right? And so a kid will have a different experience in each reading group. With our 7th and 8th graders, typically we see that decoding and phonics have really been solidified. For most of our 7th and 8th graders, even those with dyslexia and other reading disabilities, they are able to decode text at a grade appropriate level because of the work they've done in kindergarten through 6th grade. But we do still have some who want to continue to work on their fluency. And for those students, we offer decoding and fluency groups during their study hall time. And this is another opportunity for those students. Their reading classes are now focusing much more on comprehension. They're focusing much more on written expression. And so they are additionally working in their study hall time to continue to move their fluency forward a little bit. Because in high school, the amount of text assigned does increase. And so many students have a goal of getting to a certain level of fluency so that their high school assignments won't take as long for them to complete. So we want to honor that there are students who continue to have those goals in 7th and 8th grade, and we provide opportunities for them to practice. So as we focus on comprehension, these are some of the books that our kids read from about 2nd grade with My Name is Maria Isabel to about 12th grade with Heart of Darkness. And you can see the progression. They get more and more dense. The vocabulary grows. The sentence structure becomes more complex. The experiences of the characters move from being very familiar to very unfamiliar to the reader. And so what we find is that students at McLean with dyslexia really do love to read, that they love that because comprehension is an area of strength for them, and because we've addressed their needs for phonics and decoding and fluency practice, that they engage with these books as abstract thinkers, they engage actively, and they really enjoy deep and rich conversation appropriate to their developmental level about all of these books. I want to move on and talk about the role of assistive technology here, because regardless of how much a person works on their phonics and decoding and skills, there is a brain structure behind dyslexia that leads to a limit for some people. So depending on the severity of the dyslexia, a student can end up anywhere from being able to read words and sentences, to being able to really read paragraphs, to being able to very much read chapters and chapter books, but it will always be more effortful. The structure of the brain doesn't change. Those areas in the back of the brain really limit the student's true ability to read. They will get better at reading, and they may be able to read at the same rate and speed as a person without dyslexia, but it will always be more effortful for a student with dyslexia to read than for a student without dyslexia. And that is where assistive technology comes in. So assistive technology today is very readily available. A lot of us use it even though we don't have dyslexia. For example, if you are using GPS in your car, it's telling you the directions, you're not really reading the map. Many of us enjoy Audible and podcasts, which are, audio versions of newspapers and audio versions of novels and autobiographies and other things. Our phones will speak to us, and we use speech to text. I use it as well, and I don't have a reading disability. And so it's a great time actually to be a person with dyslexia, because the opportunities to use technology to overcome that one piece that's difficult for you are just everywhere and very readily available. At McLean, we encourage all of our students, whether they have dyslexia, another reading disability, or whether they don't, to try out these pieces of assistive technology. Teachers use them in the classroom with all students, and they really sort of normalize the use of technology for any accommodations that a student would need. And they lower the barrier for students who do have significant dyslexia or reading disabilities in order to access content in math, in science, in music. The music teacher, Mr. Moujon, asked me to come in to his class next week because he is using a computer program with his students to teach them how to read music. And he felt that the computer program for reading music was helping them to better read words when they were then going through the words to the song. And so he wanted me to come and investigate that with him. So we're going to be doing that next week. So we encourage assistive technology here at McLean. We do understand that students and parents have as a goal that their children will be able to learn to read. And we respect that goal. We also want to show students that while they are learning to read, while they are expanding and strengthening their phonics skills, that they have this other opportunity to access information and stories through assistive technology that will prevent them from missing out on the things that they can't read yet. And so we really do encourage assistive technology. We encourage it, as I said before, teachers help students access it. We model how it's used, and we require students to use it. So one way that we help students use assistive technology is through recorded exams. If you are taking an exam and it is difficult for you to read the print on the page, that pulls your brain away from the work that it needs to be doing related to the math or science or history that knowledge or skill that you're trying to demonstrate. So we're going to play a little bit for you of this recorded exam so you can see how a student might experience it.
All right, Geometry Honors Chapter 2 test. Read and listen to each question carefully and answer all parts. Show your work for partial credit. Box/circle your answers. Number 1, make a conjecture about the next term in this sequence. -11, -7, -3, 1, 5.
This is a great example because it shows that the teacher has pre-recorded the test and the student is accessing it through an iPad or through their device. They simply have the iPad or the device resting on their desk along with the exam. They have a pair of headphones plugged into the device, and they can hear the teacher read the exam as many times as they want by, fast forwarding or rewinding the playback. It's very helpful because exams can already be anxiety-producing situations. We don't want students to, we want the exam to be a true measure of whether the student knows the content that they've been taught, whether they have the skills that they've been taught, not whether they're able to read, especially not in a class that is not a reading class. So this is a very helpful support for students. We also, on the note of exciting assistive technology, you may be aware now of reader pens. It looks like a highlighter and it has an earbud jack at the back so that the student holds the highlighter in their hand and runs it across the words on the printed page. And then the pen will read the words. It scans the words and reads the words to the students using the headphones. And so that's another really great piece of assistive technology that McLean provides for students that allows them to access text that they might not be able to access, but in a way that's very embedded, integrated, acceptable, and even actually pretty cool. So for students at McLean, all of us as teachers and reading specialists, we feel very much responsible for making sure that students who experience reading challenges or dyslexia, that they are able to make real progress towards their goals of independent and fluent reading, and also demonstrate what they know in all of their classes. So towards that end, as a summary, we do provide daily intensive reading instruction for kindergarten through 8th grade. Now, most schools do stop with daily intensive reading instruction around grades 3 or 4, and it's expected that students are at that point fluent and independent and able to move on. We find that students at McLean benefit from a longer runway. They do become fluent readers. It just takes them a little longer. So we continue the support all the way up into 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And we fade the support out as their performance on the reading assessment shows that they're meeting grade level standards. We also embed accommodations for reading challenges from kindergarten all the way through 12th grade. And that means that if a child is at a point in their reading journey where they are not yet able to access the texts they need independently, then we have lots of assistive technology, lots of teacher support, and also class time and tutoring time at school so that they can access that text, even if they're not yet ready to read it independently. And finally, the grading at McLean is based on the goals and objectives of the course that the child is in. And we work very hard to make sure that the assessments measure the child's knowledge and skills related to that course and are not influenced by the child's reading abilities. That is most important for children who do struggle in reading, but are probably very strong in math, in science, in history, and in the arts and athletics. And finally, we really see a reading journey as a family journey, and a journey that the school and the family take together with the child. And so I often spend time talking with parents about what they can do at home to support well, first we talk about what the school is doing to support their child, so that they can understand all of the components of reading instruction that the child is getting at school. But parents always want to know, that's the number one question, what can I do with my child at home? And so the way that we practice reading with children is the same way that we practice other skills like basketball or piano. If you want to work with your child to help them to learn to read, you should do it often, right? Every day is best reading. Do it together, right? You don't usually send your child outside to shoot hoops by themselves. You usually go out with them. Make it fun and make it positive. The research shows that spending a very short amount of time every day, so 10 minutes a day, is much, much, much more effective than spending a long time every other day, or even spending a long time every day. The child becomes tired and unmotivated. Short practice every day is best. We encourage you to read to your child if your child is not yet able to read to themselves. That's because language comprehension is built up by reading. And so your child is gaining vocabulary, background knowledge, understanding of sentence structure, understanding of text as you are reading, even if they can't read themselves. We also encourage you to watch movies and documentaries and TV together and talk about the words and the information that's going on the screen. And finally, to get hands-on experience in the community together, whether that's doing service or being part of cultural or religious organizations, traveling. All of these things expand a child's exposure to the world. They help grow their vocabularies. They give them authentic opportunities to speak and interact with others. These are all huge parts of a child's language development and reading development. It's important for you as the parent to affirm where your child is. You want to tell them that they're growing and improving. You want to tell them that you enjoy the time you spend with them reading and doing other things. That's the most important thing. We also offer complimentary reading screenings for children who are not part of the McLean community. So lots of families do want to know, does my child have is my child on track with their reading? Are there any reasons for concern? So some of the assessments that we use at McLean are very helpful in quickly determining whether a child needs reading intervention or not. And so we are planning another reading screening for February, and you are welcome to sign up. It is free, and you come in for 30 minutes. You meet one of our reading teachers, or I myself am part of the reading screening, and we will work with your child for a short period of time, give them the assessment, and then come and speak to you, let you know how they're doing, and what sorts of interventions might be appropriate, or whether all is well and you can sit back and enjoy your child's reading journey with them. So that is what I wanted to share with you today, but I'm certain that there are things that I did not cover. Taryn looks like she might have some questions there on the screen.
Yes, I have some excellent questions actually. So in going through the chat, one of the questions was if our students here at McLean that are dyslexic, do they get sufficient support within the school or do they sometimes need outside tutoring?
Okay, this is an excellent question because dyslexia exists on a spectrum. And so because we collect assessment information, we often can tell when a student comes in by where they are and by their rate of change in the first few months, whether we anticipate that they will get to benchmark at a certain point or whether they may struggle to reach benchmark for many years. Most of our students, 90% of our students do achieve benchmark within that period of kindergarten through 8th grade, right? But there are 10% of students for whom we start to wonder whether they will achieve benchmark by the end of 8th grade. Those are families that we do talk with, and we do what we tend to do is show them all of the assessment information, share everything that's been going on at McLean, because that child receives additional things at McLean beyond what other students are receiving. Brainstorm together about whether there's anything else the school can do, because it is our goal to have students' reading needs met within the school day. But at that point, it may be determined by the team that it is best for the child to have some additional outside support or intervention to see if that will make a difference between being able to read on benchmark or being still behind benchmark. But it's a small number. I would say 1 to 2% of our students need additional reading instruction beyond the school day.
Great. Thank you very much. That actually also helps to address another question, which is how do you communicate with parents if there is a concern about their child's reading development? So you spoke a little bit about presenting the data, looking at the reading tests that you've done. Anything else to add to that? I mean, it's very, I think that it's very proactive, the approach that you take in terms of informing parents. You know, you want to make sure that they know right away what interventions and strategies they could be using, but I don't know if there's a particular method that you use.
There is. So when we do give the reading assessments in the fall, winter, and spring, all families get the results of those assessments each time, and they can see where their student was the year before or in the previous months, and then they can see the progress that has been made. For students who are scoring below benchmark, the reading specialists and I meet with those families and we talk specifically about why that student is scoring below benchmark. Does it have to do with their letter sound knowledge? Does it have to do with the speed at which they're reading? Is it a comprehension issue? And so we really pick apart the information that we have about students to make a plan with the family that specifically supports that student at school. And families report that they really appreciate getting the regular updates and having the face-to-face meetings between the reading specialist and the family so that we are all on the same page. We are all working transparently towards that student meeting benchmark. And they also love to see the progress and the growth. Families sometimes worry that that progress isn't going to come. But it is a matter of having that extended runway. Like it would be great if all of our students were reading on benchmark by 3rd or 4th grade, but they're not. And that is why we continue to provide ongoing reading support all the way up through that 8th grade year.
Excellent. Thank you for that. One of the other questions that we have is, you know, if you have a child that is reading above grade level but has this diagnosis of dyslexia, how do you find that balance between continuing to push them towards higher interest texts, maybe science-based things like that, if they are struggling a little bit with the dyslexia piece? Like, is that where the assistive technology piece comes in? If you could talk a little bit about that.
For students with dyslexia, it is really important that whether they are in kindergarten or 12th grade, that they have unlimited access to audio text. They should be able to read and find out about anything that they want in an audio format. So we have students at McLean who are really passionate about planets and outer space and the solar system, and they are using Sora and they're using the Montgomery County Library System to really access all kinds of very rich text through the audio format. A challenge that comes with dyslexia is that because it's so much more taxing for the brain to interpret printed text, kids with dyslexia are strong in comprehension, but they can start to fall behind if they're not consuming as much text as their peers. And it is an easy fix. Anything that is read aloud to them, either by a parent, a teacher, or assistive technology, will fill in that gap. It will allow them to continue to expand their knowledge of the world, expand their vocabulary, engage with more and more sophisticated text on a topic without the print disability getting in the way. And so that is one of the things that's, for me as a reading coordinator, the best part about being at McLean is that I have all of the teachers who are in the areas of math and science and history and art, they recognize that, and they make sure that when they are working with text that they have embedded already the audio version for everyone, anyone who wants to use it, right? And so it's not, oh, you have dyslexia, you have to use this other strange thing. It's like, no, we're all using this right now. It's helping all of us learn. Anyone who wants to can access the text in this way. And it's very, very exciting for me to see students who do have a reading disability just sort of blow past that and be involved in their area of passion. It speaks to the McLean abilities model, right? That what we're looking at always is what the kid is strong at, is passionate about, where they can shine. And kids can feel the difference when we focus on their strengths versus when we focus on their areas of vulnerability.
Thank you for that. What percentage of students would you say, Natalie, at McLean have a diagnosis of dyslexia?
Oh, great question. So we actually, reading disabilities is one of the things that we do well, but we have a lot of students who have no disabilities of any kind, who are completely neurotypical. And we have students who face other challenges but are quite excellent readers. So it's a little bit different between the lower school and the middle school. In the lower school, I would say about half of our students have a reading challenge, and they are not yet on benchmark. But as they get older, they've had more time and more instruction. Once we get to 5th grade, it becomes more like 40%. 6th grade is more like 30. And then 8th grade, it's somewhere between 8 to 10. It then changes a little bit in the upper school too, because upper school admits a lot of new students who have not had McLean's reading support in their kindergarten through 8th grade years. So we see a bump again, actually, in the number of students who are not performing on benchmark in reading because of the new admissions to the McLean Upper School.
Got it. Which brings me to an upper school specific question, actually. Which is, since study hall is an elective choice for grade 7 and up, is there ever a time during study hall that those needing additional support in reading or fluency can get that support, or what does that look like?
I have been in conversation with Mr. Miller, the head of the upper school, to talk about adding study hall support for the upper school in reading and reading fluency. At this point, it has not happened. This is the first year that we're providing reading intervention for 7th and 8th grade in study hall, and it is working very well. And so we approached Mr. Miller about starting that for the upper school next year, and he's very open to that as well. One of the things that is important to note is that it becomes progressively more difficult to help a student read fluently the older that they get. It's not impossible. It can still happen. It just takes more and more work. They say that, if a student has some sort of reading issue in the first grade, usually a year or two of reading intervention will address that issue. If you wait until fourth grade, you're going to need 4 years of reading intervention to address that issue. And I'm not aware of any statistics of what happens if you wait until ninth grade, but it becomes larger, or that is the trend in the data. So we do really encourage students, starting in the 7th and 8th grade, but certainly in the upper school, to take advantage of the accommodations that they are legally entitled to, and that are always going to be available to them throughout their lifetimes. So we are balancing the goals of the family and the child, who typically want that child to read fluently and independently, which is an important and valuable goal, along with the cost of that, the things that they couldn't, the amount, if they are spending their time practicing their reading fluency, they are then necessarily not using that time for something else. And that becomes trickier once you get into the upper school. But I do think that next year we will have a study hall for students in the upper school who would like to increase their fluency and reading independence. And that would be an opt-in rather than an opt-out situation.
Great. Let me look. I feel like, oh, there was one other question about how do we approach spelling and writing? Do we have a structured approach for that? How does that connect with the reading program?
So we absolutely do have a structured approach for spelling and writing. So let's take spelling first. Spelling is typically taught within the reading portion of the day, because as we are learning to read the word, we're also going to then learn to spell the word. Or as we are learning to read words with a certain pattern, we're also going to learn to spell words with a certain pattern. And so for many students, even students at McLean who are typically developing, they will be able to read many, many more words than they can spell. For those students who are on grade level or advanced, we do extend spelling instruction so that they get explicit instruction on how to spell multisyllabic and complex words that they are able to read very easily, but probably not able to spell correctly. For students with dyslexia, reading instruction proceeds much more slowly and much more systematically, because each sound and spelling pattern needs to be introduced. And so they learn to spell as they are learning to read, going at a slow and steady pace, just to make sure that there are no gaps or holes or anything that would trip them up later in their academic career. Writing, because many of our students do need a lot of intensive reading instruction, we separate reading and writing. So students have a reading block every day of time, and they also have a writing block every day of writing time. And we have been working on introducing clearly sentence structure, helping students understand the boundaries of a sentence so that they neither have run-on sentences nor incomplete sentences, and that they can write really, really good sentences about the things that they are learning in school, perhaps related to science or social studies or to a book that they've read. And then moving from those strong sentences, we move into strong paragraphs, starting with our 4th graders who are doing strong paragraphs, and then moving from strong paragraphs into essay writing with our 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. At no point do we ever lose track of strong sentences or paragraphs. So it's not like if you're in 7th and 8th grade, you're done writing sentences. You're not. We make sure that the sentences become more complex and that they are about topics that are more sophisticated than the sentences that our 3rd graders write. But at those three levels, we're providing the sentence level instruction, the paragraph level instruction, and the essay level instruction for students in grades 4 up.
Excellent. That was a really informative answer, by the way. You really covered a lot with that.
Sorry.
No, it was wonderful. It was wonderful. You've covered so much in this presentation. So I've actually covered the questions that have been chatted to me, but I'm sure that people will probably have other questions as they digest all of this information. And thank you, Natalie, for so graciously providing your email, which is on the slide. And I'm also going to chat everyone my email address, which is ttenney@McLean School, my colleague, Unique Saunders, and our Director of Enrollment, Kathy Patterson. So you have our email addresses as well. I really hope that you enjoyed today's webinar. I really very much enjoyed it. I always love hearing Natalie speak because she is such an expert and really knows our kids and has an incredible depth of understanding of the reading process. So with that, we hope that you'll join us at our next webinar, which is on executive functioning support. It is scheduled for January, so keep an eye out for that. It is on our website. And just a little bit of admission housekeeping. If you are interested in applying to McLean or coming to visit, we'd love to see you for a small group tour or an individual tour. There's an opportunity to meet with us using a 30-minute, we use Calendly, it's a 30-minute period of time that you sign up for, which you can see on our admission page. And our application deadline for those that are considering applying is January 20th. Keep in mind that we do require testing for students in grades 2 and up. So that is something that you definitely want to have ready to go. So the application is due on the 20th. I'm sure you will have questions. Natalie has an email. You have the admissions office emails as well. I think that somebody might just have popped one more question in, if you don't mind answering that. And
I don't mind. I'm absolutely happy to.
Perfect. So there was someone who asked about Step Up to Writing. Is that something that we use as part of our writing program?
Yes, so Step Up to Writing is something that we use in the middle school. For people who are unfamiliar, Step Up to Writing helps students, particularly at the paragraph and at the essay level, because it helps students to color code the portions of a paragraph that are, say, the introductory statement, the details in the middle of the paragraph, and the concluding or transition statement to the next paragraph. Our students find the structure of Step Up to Writing very helpful, and they find the color coding of Step Up to Writing very helpful. We have found as a school that it's important to add rich and interesting content to Step Up to Writing. So Step Up to Writing does not tell you necessarily what to write about. And so we like to give students really interesting information to write on. So for example, last spring, our 7th graders were using Step Up to Writing, and they were learning about the soccer team in Indonesia that had been stuck in an underground cave and had to have an emergency rescue. And so they were melding informational text about the emergency rescue with Step Up to Writing to create essays on this topic. I think they also did movie reviews. So they had looked at several interesting movies, and then they were melding Step Up to Writing with what had happened in the movie to write a review. We've also added lots of pieces and elements from the writing revolution to Step Up to Writing, and that is because Step Up to Writing does not have great sentence level instruction. And for many kids, that piece is missing. Like, it's great to know the structure of a paragraph, but if you're not clear on the boundaries of a sentence, then you may be trying to write a paragraph with either many run-ons or incompletes. And so that is something that we've really been adding to Step Up to Writing lately, and we've had a lot of good success with that.
Which I think is also a testament to the McLean Method and just how responsive we are to student needs as they arise. We always find different ways to support. So with that, it is almost 1 o'clock. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. It's been great to have you. I hope that you found this informative. Please feel free to reach out to us, reach out to Natalie, give us a call if you have any questions, and hopefully we'll see you on the Executive Functioning Expert Series in January. So thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.